Hey guys, my name is Matteo, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming or Battlefield-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the format out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. The first question for today is, what do you think about having a game mode, or a game setting really, with all of the HUD disabled? This would be amazing for realistic gameplay. Well, I'm assuming that this question is in response to the video that I did recently, where I turned off my UI entirely in Battlefield 4 and then ran around with the bolt-action rifles as a recon. It's a hell of a lot of fun. It's about as realistic as you're going to be able to make Battlefield, and while I love it, I don't know if this is something that we want to have as an official game mode in the Battlefield franchise unless it's done very, very well. Right now, one of the biggest issues with the game modes that we have is that there's so many, and there's so many to choose from, that a lot of them die out just simply because there isn't the player base to sustain them. Not only is there normal mode, hardcore, and classic, but then there's 15 different game modes that you can play between all of those different presets. So technically, there are 45 different types of game modes depending on what type of preset, normal, classic, and hardcore, and then all the different game modes in this game. And because of that, a lot of the game modes have died. Just to kind of run through them, no one plays air superiority. Capture the flag is dead. I would say that carrier assault is dead. Chain link, defuse, domination, obliteration, squad deathmatch, squad obliteration, all of these have died. And I think the biggest thing that contributes to it is that there's just too many of them. There just isn't the player base to sustain it, but also a lot of the maps simply are not balanced around these game modes. And so now imagine we add in this ultra realistic mode into the mix. Yeah, for a couple of weeks it would be really exciting. A lot of people will be jumping onto the bandwagon, trying out the shiny new toy, but after that, people would want to go back to what they're comfortable with. They're going to go back to normal servers. Yeah, there might be a couple of people that want to continue to play on this ultra realistic mode because it's a hell of a lot of fun. Like, I love to do that every once in a while, but I just don't think that there's going to be the player base to sustain it. Server admins are going to realize that not enough people are joining their servers. They want to have a healthy server population. That's the reason why they're paying for their servers, and so they're going to go back to the normal classic presets, normal conquest and rush, because they want to keep their player base coming back to their server. If you don't believe me, just look at the classic mode that DICE introduced into Battlefield 4. Some of you may not have any idea what classic mode is because honestly DICE did a very poor job of advertising that this was then added into the game, but essentially it's in between normal mode and hardcore. It has some interesting features here and there, but no one really plays on it. A couple of servers tried it out, but everyone back onto the normal because that's what the vast majority of the Battlefield population wants to play on. And so I just can't see this really working, at least in its current state in Battlefield 4. Maybe in the next Battlefield title they could do something like that, but honestly, I would really like DICE to maybe just focus on a couple of game modes, maybe not go more than 6 total, maybe have something like normal mode, hardcore, and maybe ultra realistic, so that they can balance everything around it, and then they don't have this massive bloating problem where, yeah, technically they have 15 goddamn different game modes to choose from, but really only 3 of them are viable, and that's really what the entire population plays on. And so while conceptually I love this idea, turning off your UI in Battlefield 4 is a hell of a lot of fun. It's challenging, it adds in a further layer of realism that you just don't really get to experience in Battlefield 4 in any other way, but because of all the things that I just mentioned, I just don't see this being a viable thing to add into the game. Unless it is polished to a fine sheen, they're able to figure this out somehow, or maybe in the next Battlefield game, if they really focus on this game mode and just a couple of other ones, I could maybe see it working, but at least the way that things are working right now, I just don't think it's worth the time for DICE to pursue something like this. Solid recommendation though. The next question comes from Hunter, and it is, since the mouse and keyboard is coming to consoles, do you think that they should do Counter-Strike Go for the next gen, and people who have a mouse and keyboard can play against PC players? Now that is a really cool idea. this may actually be where things are heading in the future. It may not be for Counter-Strike Go, that may not be the game that happens, but I really hope that games start to become more cross-platform if they are using a mouse and keyboard, and that may be the case if Xbox One does really start to dedicate itself to not only using a controller, but this mouse and keyboard support. One of the great things about the new game Rocket League, other than the fact that it's fantastic, is that it's cross-platform between PC and the PlayStation 4. This gives them a huge pool of players to choose from. One of the difficult things about multiplayer games is keeping their community active. And if you're able to basically, maybe not necessarily double your player base, because there are going to be fewer people to playing on PC, a lot of gamers on console, but even if you're able to bring in a completely different community, as long as there isn't any disparity, there isn't any disadvantage or advantage depending on what your system you're playing on, that increases your player base, and those multiplayer games are going to have a much easier chance of surviving and thriving into the future. Rocket League is probably going to be one of those games. When I jumped on earlier today, there was 150,000 people playing that game at any given time. That's more people playing than Battlefield 4. Rocket League is just a small little indie game. They assumed that they were only going to have like 10,000 gamers concurrently playing at any given time, and while it's probably due in part because the game is awesome, it's got a lot of hype right now, it's also due in part because they do have this cross-platform thing going on. And so if Microsoft is serious about having mouse and keyboard support on the Xbox One, and they're really going to support it, then I can't see why we couldn't have something like this for future games, or even something like Counter-Strike. As long as there isn't any advantage or disadvantage depending on which system you're playing on, then having a larger community can't really be a bad thing. At the end of the day, the Xbox and the PlayStation are a computer. I mean, that's really what it is at its core. Sure, it has a few unique things here and there, but at its core, they are a computer, and so why not just expand your player base and have more people playing your multiplayer games? Maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe there is this huge drawback that I just can't think of off the top of my head, but other than having to wait maybe a little bit longer for updates, because on PC you can update quite quickly. You don't have to go through Microsoft and Sony to validate patches, which takes a couple of weeks, but other than that, I can only see this being a net positive for the games that do it successfully. At the end of the day, though, this is really going to be dependent on Microsoft if this ever becomes a thing. It may not. This may be something that Microsoft has no interest in whatsoever, but if the mouse and keyboard support isn't top-notch and it doesn't rival and isn't as good as mouse and keyboard support on, of course, a PC, which is phenomenal, it just may never ever happen. It's an awesome idea. It could be amazing for future games, but we're really just gonna have to wait and see at this point. The next question comes from Justin, and it is, what if you got some invincibility in Gunmaster while you change weapons? It's very tiresome when you kill someone to change weapons and an enemy rounds the corner and all you can do is watch him kill you. I feel your pain on this one. I play Gunmaster all the time. I love this game mode, and one of the more annoying parts of it is that when you're going on this awesome kill streak, you transition on over to another gun. As you said, it sucks when you're going through that transition. You're trying to bring up the fat M60 light machine gun. It's taken an eternity, and they have no problem getting a nice free kill on you. It's really frustrating. The thing is, though, I would never want there to be invincibility or have a moment where you're immune to damage when you are going through that transition. A lot of people already hate the spawn immunity that's in the game. Sure, I think spawn immunity is fine if you're on an objective, but just count how many times you probably died in the thick of combat where you're about to take someone out and then two guys spawn directly on them. You take out the first guy, you go for the second and third, but they have spawn immunity. You put like 4 or 5 bullets into them. You're already running low on ammunition. They turn around, you're left with a pistol, and you die immediately after that. It's really frustrating. Now imagine the frustration that will occur when you're running around on Gunmaster, you come across an enemy who was just in a firefight, you start to take some shots at him, realize that he's actually immune, you're going through your bullets before you realize that you've made your mistake, and now he's got a fresh gun, he's out of his immunity, and he's gonna be able to take you out as well. It's a really bad idea. And so while I do sympathize with you, it is frustrating, it's really just a part of the game mode. In my opinion, it actually makes it a little bit more enjoyable, at least in some circumstances. If you're able to work around the disadvantage of switching through the guns, you're conscious of that weakness that you're gonna have, and you're able to overcome it and continue on
with their kill streak, it just makes those kill streaks even more enjoyable. And so while I do get where you're coming from, it is frustrating. I would never want anything like this in Gunmaster because I think it would just be hell on earth. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. As always, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.